How we talk about our kids when they're around really matters. And oftentimes our words aren't helpful and we don't even realize it because it's a completely normal conversation we're having. And today we're going to talk about some of those situations you should be watching out for. We're going to talk about parent-teacher conferences and how that plays into all of this with an experienced principal. So when we are born, from when kids are about 6 years old on, is when their subconscious mind gets mainly formed. And then it continues on for a few more years, but 0 through 6 is the most important part.
90%.
And then 90% is formed by then. And then the rest gets formed until you're about 12. So why is your subconscious mind important? Well, because it controls most of what we do. Our conscious thinking isn't what takes over most of the time. Our reactions, how we feel about ourselves, how we handle difficult situations, how we handle criticism, all these things and how they affect us have to do with our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind gets built by our experiences when we're little. So what we experience then is pretty important. And the words we have spoken over us are very important. So as parents, we want to be very mindful what we do and how we speak. So we wanted to talk about a few of those situations that are very common where as parents, we speak words over our kids that aren't really helpful and we don't even realize that we're doing it. One of my main things that I can think of, and we talked about this and we kind of agreed, is when you meet a new family and, you know, the kid is kind of shy and hiding and not making eye contact and not really looking at you. And right away, the parent excuses the behavior with, well, he's shy. Well, she's shy. They're really shy meeting new people. So you have to think every time this child meets a new person, they are being told they are shy. And I have met adults that would attest to that they are shy because all their life they were told they are shy. The question is that really something you want to do for your child? And are you possibly doing it and not even realizing it? Because I know a lot of people are. Because we don't realize it. And we kind of make that comment to make ourselves feel better, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
It's basically, so why do we say that?
It's an excuse to excuse a behavior that we're feeling a little embarrassed about. I've seen so many kids at school where the parents speak over them one way, they're shy or they're hyper or some manner of category. And then we have them at school and they show us the opposite. Or the parent's concerned because their child can't speak in front of the class and give a presentation because they're so shy. And we don't see that at school. We see an outgoing, we see somebody who's confident, who can deliver a presentation just fine. And so it's interesting how we perceive our kids and how we speak over them. But the problem is that when you speak over them so much in that one way, they start owning that. And then you start having a child who is shy because they've been told all their life, you're shy. Or they don't take on a new challenge because they've been told, well, you're not good at that, you can't.
So a few other things that happen quite a bit that we speak over our kids without noticing or without meaning anything bad is, oh, she's bossy. Mm-hmm. Well, she's right there. That's not helpful for her to hear. Or
he's lazy.
Oh yeah, he's lazy. That's a big one. Mm-hmm.
Parent-teacher conferences and the teacher saying, oh, well, they're not getting as much work done. Oh yeah, they're lazy. The child's sitting right there. And we have two adults now telling them basically they're lazy because, you know, the teacher doesn't necessarily say they're not. And so the child believes that they're lazy. Well, guess what? They're going to live up to that expectation. They're going to stay lazy.
Also, like he's only interested in, and then fill in the blank, video games, reading, which sometimes can even be seen as a negative thing because, you know, oh, he never plays because all he does is read. Mm-hmm. He's a loner. I've heard parents say that about their child with their child right there. he can't sit still. He's hyper. He's just so hyper.
Mhm.
The kid's right there. Other things, especially when it comes to school, that we hear quite a bit is, oh, he can't read. She can't read.
Yeah, we have parents who talk about the fact that their children can't read, but they're constantly making comments about their child's not a good reader. Their child's not a good reader right in front of their child. And so all the child's hearing is, I'm not a good reader. And they start owning that and believing that. And so you sit down to read with them as a teacher or a parent or somebody, and the child already has this piece, I'm not a good reader. And they even really, sometimes they're in kindergarten, they haven't had a chance to even really learn to read yet. But they already have this belief that I'm not a good reader.
As a reading tutor, I can attest to that. Every single child I have worked with walked into a session with me telling me that they can't read, they're not a good reader, they're not good with letters. And usually these kids that I work with are 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. That is their belief about themselves. So my first step with them is to change that belief. Because once we change that belief, suddenly their reading takes off. So be very mindful. Another thing that we hear a lot, oh, he's not good at math. Well, if you keep telling your child they're not good at math, and you pay for tutoring, their math is probably not going to get much better because their belief about themselves hasn't changed.
And we see that in education. We get a child who changes their mindset. We can change the way that they see themselves as, oh, I can do this. And all of a sudden they just take off. And that's the biggest piece we need.
So 2 reasons why we just noticed that, we say things about our child that aren't helpful. Number 1 being we're wanting to excuse a behavior that we're maybe feeling a little embarrassed about, or that just the way the behavior manifests, like not making eye contact, being all over the place, we're trying to excuse the behavior. And when I talked to him about that, he said he had advice for me, like, what do you do instead of making the excuse? When we have that feeling like, well, this is annoying, I'm just meeting this person, what are they thinking? What should we do instead?
So we just move past it. So if we have a child and it's like, oh, this is so-and-so, so-and-so say hi, and they don't. And you're going, oh, awkward. I want them to say hi. Like, this is somebody who's important. It's a family member I haven't seen in a long time, or a good close friend. We want to make a good impression. You can address that behavior with your child and do a reteach or teach about, hey, when we meet new people, this is how I want you to go. This is why it's important to make eye contact, shake a hand, say hi, say your name, whatever it is that you're wanting to teach them for that age. But do that out of the scenario, after the fact, away from the scenario, practice it, play with it, role play it, have fun with it. And that way, the next time they're set up for success, but don't do it in the moment.
And another time where these conversations come up is when you genuinely are seeking advice from someone about your child. I completely believe that talking through our problems with friends or teachers or a doctor or specialist or something it's super important. So I'm not saying don't do that, but how do we do it better?
I think I work with teachers a lot just in how do I handle that parent who wants to talk to me at parent pickup when I'm busy with other kids, I have my job to do, I have other things going on. And even though as a teacher, I want to have a conversation about how the child's day was because maybe something happened, it is not the time and place because we have an audience, because the child's there. And so we want to do something different. So schedule a meeting, set up a time that we can talk, maybe a phone call, so we can do it without the child, without an audience, and have it at an appropriate time and actually be able to get good dialogue happening where it's not just on the sidewalk because we're both here and we can quickly have this conversation. It's okay. It's not okay. So schedule that time, find a time, make the time to have those conversations. That way you're well thought out and the other person's prepared to really give you good advice.
So we've already talked a little bit about parent-teacher conferences, but I wanted to pick his brain a little bit more after, almost 15 years in school administration. He has quite a bit of advice for us on this. Parent-teacher conference time is, and the teacher says, oh, I want you to come too. Kids are invited. So how do we handle this? How do we know when is it great to bring our child? When is it maybe not a good idea to bring our child? So how do we know?
So schools do different conferences. Some schools do a portfolio conference that's led by the student where the teacher's been collecting work all year and the child's going to sit down and pull out their favorite piece and talk about what they did. And the teacher guides them through. And the whole purpose is to really show the child what they've accomplished and how much they've grown, as well as for you as a parent to see what they've accomplished and what they've grown. Those are wonderful parent-teacher conferences. And yes, your child should be there for those. If the conference is about working through behavior or concerns or questions, and the majority of the conference is going to be about that, that's not a conference to bring your child to. That's a conversation to have with a parent, leave your child at home, find a babysitter, and have a good dialogue. And that way you can speak openly and not try to speak in code, or come prepared. Know what the conversation is going to be. Usually as parents, you have a feeling of, is this going to be a conversation where we're going to get some things sorted out? Is this going to be just a catch up kind of what's been going on and some things that we can work on? It's not that you can't have a child be there for any negative. I'm not saying that. It's how it's presented. And that's what you want to find out. Are there going to be some big concerns? Are we going to be talking about the concerns in this piece? Or are we talking about the whole global piece? And the child should feel uplifted, walking away with some goals to work on for the rest of the year from the conference.
So how do I handle that as a parent? How do I prepare for this? Like, is there something I should do when I get this notice home? Parent-teacher conferences are coming up. Is there something I should do? So I know that the way parent-teacher conference will go will feed into what we just talked about.
So usually parent-teacher conferences are 15, 20 minutes. The teacher's prepared. They've got their information they want to get through. They are controlling that conference because they've got their stuff to get through. But as a parent, you want to make sure you've sat down ahead of time and prepared yourself. What are the questions you have? Because they will at some point say, do you have any questions? And you want to make sure you have those. And it may not be that they'll get all answered at the parent-teacher conference, but you can schedule another time to catch up, or an email with more information, or whatever the case is for that. So prior to parent-teacher conference, if I want to know more about the conference, email the teacher. You should have a conversation already, a dialogue back and forth with your child's teacher. You should have that relationship already. So if you don't, great time to establish it. Send them an email. Just, hey, I'm looking forward to parent-teacher conferences. I want to know, is this a conference I should be bringing my son or daughter to, or should I leave them at home? Are we going to be able to address X, Y, and Z, whatever your concerns are, so that they can respond to you and you can make that informed decision about, is this a conference to bring my children to or not?
Okay. So that's the biggest thing. Make sure you're in dialogue with your child's teacher prior. Email them and then totally ask this question, like, what will this be like? And explain what your concern is. I would think that most teachers will completely understand where you're coming from and also want to encourage your child, because they know that encouragement goes a whole lot farther than tearing down. So to wrap up, what I hear is it's really important to be reflective on situations. Know kind of your times where you could have that issue that you speak in a way that's not helpful for your child, and be conscious of those times so you can learn. And these are a few little things that can make a whole big difference in the long run. If you have any more principal questions, always feel free to send them our way. This guy can help you out.